Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online, or listening through the station app of your choice. Of course, we continue on with our first week with the show, both on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. So, regardless of which station you listen to, which website you go to, or which station app you download, you can listen to the show starting at 3 each and every weekday. If you want to go the app way, which is my preferred way of listening to both of these fine radio stations, just know that they are free to download and free to use, and they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. Got a full 3 hours here, so a lot of breathing room. Mark Moses, my good friend, will be joining me coming up because there is coaching news out of Miami, and there is a college football team in Miami that's playing a big game tonight, and a team also in Florida did not fire their coach. There's just a lot going on right now when it comes to Florida and football. So I thought, who better to have on than Mark Moses, host of the Mark Moses Show, and that's coming up in less than 20 minutes. Former Packer great Amon Green will be my guest in hour number 2 to preview Saturday night's wild card tilt between the Packers and the Bears. And then, the rest of the time, it's you and me. If you want to text or call into the show, the number is the same in both of those places, 719-247-1313. We start today with the Denver Nuggets. And the legend of the Jokic-less Nuggets grows exponentially by the day. Now, last night's 114-110 win over the Boston Celtics may not go down in Colorado sports lore the way that the game against Philadelphia earlier this week did, because they had Aaron Gordon back, they had Christian Brown back, they had Jamal Murray back. But to me, it showcased what the bigger story has been this season with or without Nikola Jokic, and that is Jamal Murray. This season was always going to be about him. I know Jokic, MVPs, all that kind of stuff, but why this year is maybe different than previous, because Jokic is a through line, right? Every year is about Jokic. Can he win MVP? Is he the best in the world? All that stuff. There was extra attention by me and many on Jamal Murray. This was a big year for him. So the depth was a storyline. Jokic is a storyline. Adelman's a storyline. But Jamal Murray was always at the top of the list for me, because, among other reasons, outside of Nikola Jokic, he is the most consequential player to the Nuggets' title chances. The depth is nice. Aaron Gordon is great. If it's Jokic without the best of Jamal Murray, the Nuggets aren't dethroning the OKC Thunder. But with Jamal Murray, the guy that was right alongside Nikola Jokic putting up triple-doubles in the NBA playoffs 2 years ago, that team could potentially dethrone OKC. So he was the story before Jokic got hurt. And to me, last night, and really if you take all of these games in their totality and not just focus on Philly, I think Jamal Murray's been the story there as well. Since Nikola Jokic got hurt a little over a week ago against the Miami Heat, Jamal Murray has taken this opportunity as much as all these guys. Right? It's kind of this same thing. Jamal Murray's not the only story. He's not the only player taking this opportunity, but he is the most important one. But he is taking this opportunity like these other guys are doing to say, I am not just a byproduct of Nikola Jokic. I can do some things even without him, which is a perception that doesn't widely exist for Jamal Murray or for anyone on the Denver Nuggets for that matter. And last night, Jamal Murray put up 22 points, grabbed 8 rebounds, and dished out 17 assists, a career-high 17 assists. One game after he had 16 assists against the Brooklyn Nets. And not one of those was to Nikola Jokic, obviously. But doesn't that say something? That Jamal Murray is putting up career highs in assists without Nikola Jokic? Isn't that a little bit surprising? I think that it is. And the fact is, he was already having a career year with Jokic on the floor. With the Batman to his Robin. But even without him, and it's a small sample size, I know, but we're sitting here on Thursday. This is the sample size we got. He's keeping his scoring numbers exactly where they were before Jokic got hurt. And he's added about 4 assists and 4 rebounds to his nightly totals. He's elevated his game in the absence of Nikola Jokic, which is absolutely necessary. And it's most necessary, again, to the importance of Jamal Murray. It's more important that he elevates his game than anybody else on that basketball team. Yesterday, he told, or I don't know when he told Mark Spears this, but Mark Spears used to be on the Nuggets beat. Now he writes for Anscape. Might see Mark this weekend, by the way, in San Jose. That's not important to you. I just was thinking about it. He told Mark earlier this week in an article that was published in Anscape that he wants to be, quote, all-star, everything, scoring champ, MVP, all of it. That's what Jamal Murray still says he wants to be. Now, I don't know how possible the second two are. As well as he's scoring the basketball, he's not the NBA's leading scorer. And as long as he has Nikola Jokic on his team, it's going to be incredibly difficult for him to even garner MVP votes. But that really doesn't matter. It only matters that those are his goals, that he believes he is capable of those things. And what better time to showcase that you have the capability of being those things in an alternate universe where you're not playing with Nikola Jokic than to play the way Jamal Murray has without Nikola Jokic in this universe. This is a legacy year for Jamal Murray, regardless of what direction it has gone and will go the rest of the way. The inconsistency, the highest of highs, but also some pretty low lows with this guy. The injury, the heat pack, the Team Canada, but on the other side, the bubble, the title run. We're still, all these years later, trying to figure out who the real Jamal Murray is. Can we find what he is on a consistent basis? That's what this year was about. And it would ultimately, I think, define who he is as a player. And he has something to say about that. If it goes poorly, then it's, well, the bubble was the bubble and the title run was the title run, but Jamal Murray consistently is just not that player. Or if it goes the way it's going and continues to go this way, then it's all right. Maybe physically he was not right, which, by the way, is also on him. How many years now have the Denver Nuggets kind of in a sneaky way called him out and said, you got to be healthier. You got to be more available. You can't play yourself into shape. But if he's in shape and he's healthy and he's playing at the level he is now, then you say, okay, when Jamal Murray's right, this is what he is. He's bubble Jamal. He's playoff Jamal, except for maybe 82 games. I mean, he's on pace for that. He's playing at an all-star level. He should make the all-star game. It should bolster his all-star candidacy the way he's playing, and if he continues to play this way in the month of January. To me, Jamal Murray's play was most notable before Jokic got hurt, and it's the most notable thing about the Denver Nuggets afterwards. But, as I said, he's not the only one. Peyton Watson last night dropped 30 as he continues to add to what has been a career year for him. And last night, it wasn't even Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown, along with Watson and Murray. It really wasn't. Zeke Naji had about as many points as Aaron Gordon did. Christian Brown has not looked good in the 2 games he's played since returning from injury. It's Peyton Watson. It's Zeke Naji. It's Jalen Pickett the other night against Philadelphia. It's Spencer Jones. These are the guys that are that ended up salvaging this road trip that the Nuggets just finished up. The road trip that, if you recall, started with back-to-back losses in the state of Florida and the emotional, on top of the impact that Nikola Jokic makes on the floor, just the emotional blow of losing Nikola Jokic for the most time they've ever lost him. This world that they're living in January, they never lived in it. It's never happened that Nikola Jokic has missed this much time. But yet the Nuggets have salvaged this road trip. I'm not saying playing the parade with the team that finishes 3-5 on a road trip, but considering where it started and how it started, it's remarkable what the Denver Nuggets have been able to do finishing off this long road trip. And the guy that's as impressed as anyone is the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, of course, that being David Adelman.
I think this was an incredible road trip. I think going 3-4 with all the things that happened, losing both your centers, getting guys back on minute restrictions, different people having to step in and play, beat Philly with 9 players. Yeah, I would say this road trip was very, very successful.
And let's not forget his role in all of this. Right? We can rank who's most important, who's the biggest catalyst. And I look at Jamal Murray, but let's not forget David Adelman. Because what I said a few days ago when I was talking about Nikola Jokic being out and what the Denver Nuggets can or cannot do, I said we're going to find out how good of a coach David Adelman is. Because he laid out everything that he has to deal with. Yeah, you may look at getting Aaron Gordon or Christian Brown back as a huge positive, and it certainly is. But they're on minutes restrictions. different rotations. He's giving guys that hardly ever play a lot of minutes. Let's give a little credit to David Adelman here. Now, this is a championship organization. A 3-4, maybe I did my math wrong. It's a losing road trip, okay? No matter what way you slice it in terms of the record, whether I'm right or whether David Adelman's right, I would lean his direction. It's not a winning road trip. That kind of a road trip is not a smashing success for a team with the expectations of the Denver Nuggets, but considering the situation that they find themselves in the middle of this road trip, no less. It's pretty remarkable. And if they keep playing this way, they just may survive January after all. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Jamal Murray and the Nuggets' performance last night in Boston. After this, we'll shift our focus to football. Perhaps a surprising move, perhaps, in Miami, as Mike McDaniel has been fired. Why now? The host of the Mark Moses Show, Mark Moses, joins me to discuss next. We may have to rename Black Monday to Black Week or something, because just when we think we're done with the coaching carousel, another spot opens up today. The Miami Dolphins have relieved Mike McDaniel of his duties. I got to tell you, that was not the Florida team that I thought was going to be firing their head coach this week. Joining me now to set me straight on this issue is the host of the Mark Moses Show. He is, of course, Mark Moses, or else it'd be weird that he was hosting a show called the Mark Moses Show. What's up, buddy?
I am doing fine, buddy, and it's great seeing you. Usually, I know you're on the radio right now, but you've moved into the new technology of video streaming like I have, so I actually get to see the redness of this hair and beard. It is Andy Dalton beautiful. I love it, dude. It's great seeing you, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, buddy. It's been a while. So why now with McDaniel?
All right. Here's what's interesting. I love this press release from the Dolphins where, and it's never easy with the Dolphins. Like there are 31 teams in the NFL, and there's whatever the hell's going on in South Florida. That's what I usually is. So it's funny. The owner, Stephen Ross, who's like 90, however old he is, maybe he was just playing golf. Maybe he was hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. Who knows what was going on? But now he finally got around to, oh, I better talk to this coach. Remember, they fired their general manager during the season. So you weren't sure about Mike McDaniel. And then you had the last ditch effort by McDaniel during the season where I'm going to bench Tua, and then I'm going to prove to everyone that I can make any quarterback great outside of Tua, who we've paid $50 million to. Well, it was kind of a mixed bag with Quinn Ewers. And now, again, Stephen Ross finally, he doesn't care about your rules of Black Monday. He waited until Thursday to get this done. And I love how it was worded where they had a meeting. They probably went over, what's your vision for the future? What do you want to do? And it probably wasn't what he wanted to hear. And you know what he wanted to hear? Playoff wins, something they haven't done in 25 years. And McDaniel, what? Made the playoffs twice, 0-2. Tua only started one of those playoff games. And honestly, they had to go in another direction. They had to, because what was your ceiling with McDaniel anyway? Getting a wild card? What were you going to do, Ryan? I get why they made this decision. I get it.
Is this at all Harbaugh related, or is it Harbaugh or bust now for this organization?
Okay. This is what I've been saying for the last 2 weeks. We've seen this year where you have a quarterback that you drafted. You better get him the right coach to make sure that your tandem of great coaching, offensive play calling, and a quarterback with a potential to win, that's got to be the tandem. You're seeing it right now in Denver. You got a great future Hall of Fame offensive coordinator style coach, and you got the quarterback in the draft. That's why you're winning. We're seeing this in Chicago, and the team, I-95 north of me in Jacksonville, Liam Cohen with Trevor Lawrence. Every owner in the NFL sees that, and they go, that's what we need. We got to get the right hot coach, and we got to get the right quarterback. Forget about we got the best pass rusher, best defensive back, running. No. Quarterback, head coach. That's what you got to figure out. Now, Harbaugh is the hottest name. He can have any job he wants. And if he wants to go to South Florida, Stephen Ross has deep pockets. He's going to have to overpay to get Harbaugh. And I think he might do it. I mean, remember, Ross was on the boat with Tom Brady when Brian Flores was still the coach. I want Tom Brady, my quarterback. This guy will go to extremes to get what he wants. So if he wants Harbaugh, he's going to have to open up that checkbook.
But Mark Moses, host of the Mark Moses Show, Harbaugh doesn't fit your description of what the Dolphins need.
Exactly, because that's the Dolphins. They don't know how to win. They don't know what they're doing. Okay, but I don't know if I'd go with Harbaugh if I'm the Dolphins, but I got to go. I have to figure out, what am I going to do with Tua's contract? Because I think he's still owed about $90, $95 million. If you dump him, I mean, isn't that what happened with the Broncos with Russell Wilson?
They were still paying him this year.
But you know what? If you ask every Bronco fan who's listening right now, it was the right decision. You dumped him. Now we became a contender. If you still had Russell Wilson, where are you? Last place in the division? You made the right decision. The Dolphins are going to have to eat that contract. But then I don't know who's available out there. Do you trade? So the question is, do you dump Tua, get a better coach who you think could help your team? Then do you trade up to try to go get a quarterback in the draft? There's so many questions with this franchise, but every Dolphins fan I talk to is excited. They're moving on from Tua, Greer, the GM, and now they're getting rid of McDaniel as well.
I was just going to ask, what would be the ranking of that in terms of how happy Dolphins fans are that Tua's gone, Greer's gone, McDaniel's gone? Who would they be the most pleased about being gone?
Greer was number one, the GM who accomplished nothing. I mean, nothing as a general manager. All right, he got Tyreek Hill. He drafted Tua. There's no wins. There's no playoff wins. You didn't do anything. So that they were so excited when that happened. But it's very weird. There was a moment there for a second where you're like, all right, McDaniel, okay, maybe he gets one. No, it's over. It's over. You got to clean house. The funny one now today is then you go to West Florida and you look at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, why didn't they fire Bowles? That was going to be my next thing.
Okay, you give Bowles the opportunity to come back because look, he's been the coach there multiple years. He's won the division every single year. He's won playoff games. He has. The thing with him that's interesting is he keeps losing his offensive coordinator because we see this where Canales left him, goes to Carolina, built them into a division champ, even though that's, as we know, 8-9 division champ. Then he loses Liam Cohen. He goes to Jacksonville. Now they're going to the playoffs division champion. He's not had an offensive coordinator 2 years in a row. He's a defensive guy. But I'm with you. If you're going to fire everyone on the coaching staff except him, then why not just fire him as well? Why not just completely clean house?
Well, and then in two, the game, you have to refresh my memory on who they played. But when Todd Bowles started like cursing at the podium, and isn't that a moment where a coach acts so out of character that he's trying to summon whatever he has left motivation out of this team. And if it doesn't work, which it did not, that means, okay, he has no more bullets left in the chamber. He's out of ideas if he's going so completely against his character to be sitting up there dropping S-bombs every other word after a loss. Doesn't that seem like a guy that lost the locker room?
They were, I believe, 6-2. And they were in first place, and Baker Mayfield was an MVP candidate. Now, injuries killed this team. They come out of the bye, and they just start losing to everyone. Like Philadelphia, New England, all these teams start beating. Buffalo embarrassed them up there in northern New York. Just embarrass them. Then you're like, okay, you look at this schedule down the stretch. It's like, all right, well, we have an easy way to win the division like they've done the last 4 years. All right, we'll play New Orleans. We'll play Atlanta. We'll play Carolina. But then they're losing those games as well. He did lose the locker room. He did. And the number one thing Buccaneer insiders tell me is, he's a defensive guy. The defense looked old. They looked like a scheme that was out of date, and they just got exposed on the stretch. I'm kind of excited for Carolina. It's a younger team. Give them a chance to be competing in the playoffs. Now, I think they get killed by the Rams, but at least it was something different. And honestly, dude, the team that was playing the best on the stretch was that game we saw Sunday. Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, and then the Tyler Shuck, the rookie with New Orleans. It felt like those two teams should have gone for the division and not Carolina and Tampa down the stretch. So the whole thing is crazy. And if you would have told me, all right, so a year ago, this is where this story gets interesting. So Jaguars need a coach. They like Liam Cohen. They interview Liam Cohen. Then Tampa, they get desperate and they say, all right, we want to keep you as OC. We will make you the highest paid coordinator in the NFL. He's like, great, he'll do it. Then like 24 hours later, they're like, wait, where'd Liam go? Oh, he's in Jacksonville again because he told ownership, Shad Khan, hey, I want to be the coach, but I don't want the GM to be Trent Baalke. So Shad Khan goes, fine, we'll fire him. So he then goes back there. This is like a soap opera. So then he goes, all right, I'm going to be the coach of Jacksonville. Tampa didn't know that he went back there to go sign the contract. And then we had the press conference, as you know, Duval. It was one of those like, remember when Adam Gase got hired by the Jets and
with the crazy eyes?
The crazy eyes. That's what that reminded me of. Like, is this going to be a disaster? And all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence, 4,000 yards. And that game that's so crazy to think about, beginning of November, Jacksonville is at the Texans playing a backup. They blow a 17-point lead. Texans get the win. Here's the craziest stat. Since that game, neither team has lost a game. 8-game winning streak, and the other team, 9-game winning streak. The two hottest teams. And, hey, you know this. Jacksonville went there to Mile High and kicked the crap out of the Broncos. I'm sorry to say that. That's why this playoff is going to be fascinating.
To that end, Mark Moses, host of the Mark Moses Show, my guest here on Drive Time Sports. True or false, the representative in the Super Bowl from the AFC comes out of the 3-6 matchup between Jacksonville and Buffalo on Sunday?
I'm going to sell it. I say false. I don't know if I believe Trevor Lawrence to win 3 football games. I don't. And I don't think Buffalo, do you feel like, and there's another team, you've never seen this team go on a run. Like, and I don't think Buffalo's won a road game in 30 years as a playoff team as well. I like Jacksonville. I have to see Trevor Lawrence. I have to see him go. I mean, do you believe in that when you see a 3-6 matchup like that?
I kind of do. I have a strong feeling in my bones that the winner of that game is going to go to the Super Bowl. I think without Kansas City standing in Josh Allen's way, and I guess, do I really believe it, or do I just say, if not now, Buffalo's never going to win? Like, never, ever, ever, if not this year. So maybe that's what's kind of leading me down this road. But I kind of think that both teams are that proverbial team you don't want to play, and they're matching up, and the winner of that goes on.
I have said this for multiple weeks. You and me are around the same age, so you'll understand this analogy. This season, where the Chiefs are out, it reminds me of the NBA in the 90s when Michael Jordan went to go play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
There are all these teams that are going, wait a minute, like the Pacers and the Knicks. Wait a minute. We can win now. No one's in the Grim Reaper, the boogeyman's not in our way. There's no Patrick Mahomes. We can win. So, like, you were going into this weekend, all these teams, the Denver Broncos, the Patriots, the Jaguars, Bills, even the NFC, my Bears, like all these teams, Philadelphia, you could go on, the Seahawks. Everyone's thinking the same thing. Wait a minute. If we could just win this weekend, maybe we can make a run. That's why the Broncos getting the 1 seed, they only have to get 2 wins at home. And there's no Lamar Jackson. There's no Patrick Mahomes. We just need the ball to bounce our way. That's what's so exciting about this season, Ryan.
Yeah, I will say the one difference with your analogy, I don't know if I love Jacksonville and Buffalo compared to everyone else. I don't know if I look at any one of these teams and actually would, under normal circumstances, love them. I think it is incredibly flawed group of AFC teams. And on the NFC side, I see just absolute wagons, top to bottom. Like, I would even take, San Francisco, that is unbelievably banged up. I may take them over all but maybe 2 of the teams in the AFC. I think the NFC is stacked, and I think the AFC is a bunch of flawed teams that somebody has to be the least flawed out of all of them.
Okay. Playoffs is another level. I know that's cliche to say, but you cannot, under any circumstance, start slow. and like, oh, we're down 12-0, we're down 14-0. Don't worry, it's like in the regular season. We're playing Cleveland. We'll get back in. No. You cannot again. You've got to start fast. You cannot turn the ball over. Every NFL fan knows this. You can't be in a hole. That's why this Jacksonville Buffalo game. Remember, a couple years ago, Jacksonville hosted the Chargers and we're down 27-0.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Chargers with Herbert. They don't know how to win, but Josh Allen knows how to win one playoff game. If you give Josh Allen, if he's up 20-0, he's going to beat you.
Yeah, ball game.
Over. It's ball game. You can't screw around. That's like when I look at my Bears. It's like they beat the Packers. It turned into a Disney movie in that fourth quarter in overtime. You can't do that. You cannot do that again. You cannot be down. You've got to start fast. You can't screw up. And especially like if you're a Ben Johnson, no gimmick plays. No, don't get cute. Run the damn ball in January and score those points. And I was on another show earlier. This is very key. Don't rely on your kicker under any circumstance. Don't be like, well, it's 3 or 4. No. Kansas City Chiefs fans this when you were like in the 90s. No, do not. I mean, we saw this with Baltimore on Sunday night. Do not. No. Score them touchdowns. That's what you need.
Mark, great to catch up, buddy. Thanks for the insight. You watching Miami Ole Miss tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing this right here. I am. I'm doing this. I hope Miami wins, not only because I'm in Florida, so we never have to hear about this stupid soap opera with Lane Kiffin and what coach is going to be in this game, who left. Enough of them. Sweep the leg and beat them. That's what I want to see. The Hurricanes, who, by the way, still can't win the ACC. Okay, can't win it. It's been 24 years. Or 20, however long it's been. Can't win it. But now they have a chance to go to the national title. What? I'm taking Miami. I'm taking Indiana. Who do you like?
Hey man, I'm with you as far as your predictions. I think that that Miami defense is nasty, and I need to give Carson Beck his flowers. It's easy to hate on that guy. I thought he played winning football in their last game. I think you're right. I think it's Indiana and Miami, and I just think Indiana is they're just remarkable, and I think Indiana's going to win. I think they're head and shoulders. They're like Ohio State last year. I just think they're head and shoulders above everyone else.
Miami, I'll just say this. Miami scored 10 points at College Station. Then at Ohio State, they got the pick 6. So the offense only scored 17 points. So they've only scored 27 points combined. And we've seen what Ole Miss can do where they can score 30 plus. So the question is, do you believe, like we love Miami's defense, do you believe their offense with Carson Beck, can they score 25 points or more in this game? That's my only concern.
We'll find out in 3 hours from now. Mark Moses, appreciate you, bud. Enjoy it.
Yeah, you as well.
Yep. See ya. That is Mark Moses, host of the Mark Moses Show. You can easy enough to find him, Mark Moses Show on X. And then I am one of the few lucky ones to be friends with him on Facebook, but he streams his show on Facebook. If you search Mark Moses, he'll come right up and you can watch his show, doing great stuff down there in Florida. We'll have more Drive Time Sports right after this on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. a while, does a great job with his radio show down there in Florida. Good to catch up. He's a Bears fan, so if the Bears keep on going, I'll have to get him back on the show to pontificate about his beloved football team. But this weekend's going to be really interesting with the wild card weekend, and I truly, right now, I do think I would take the winner of that Jacksonville Buffalo game to go to the Super Bowl, because I've been on Buffalo this whole time. My theory is they're maybe goofing off a little bit during the regular season. And if they could prove me right, or they could prove me very wrong, that they're just incredibly flawed and not good enough. But if Buffalo was kind of playing with its food during the regular season, and they'll lock in, and Josh Allen will be Josh Allen. And the idea, like, Josh Allen isn't a bad playoff performer. I think he's thrown 4 picks in 13 playoff games. Like, it's not on him that they haven't beaten the Kansas City Chiefs. But if that Buffalo team shows up and Jacksonville still beats them, then I think that I buy more into Jacksonville. I think where I'm at is I'm on Buffalo. And then if Buffalo gets beat, then I got to kind of reassess my whole view here. I mean, I will say this for Jacksonville, they kind of got the short end of the stick, because I think everyone else in the AFC is where I'm at with the Buffalo Bills in terms of, I don't think I want my team to play them. But let's see what they look like in that first game. Unfortunately, Jacksonville doesn't have that opportunity. They're going to see firsthand, with their season on the line, what Buffalo looks like when the lights get brighter. And maybe the Bills flop, but I just keep going back to it. 2 years ago, I thought for Buffalo, how is it going to be any better? How are you going to get a better chance to go to the Super Bowl than the circumstances they Kansas City had to go to them? They had beaten them in the regular season. Josh Allen had certainly more weapons than he does now. Like, that was the best version, I think, that the Buffalo Bills since Josh Allen has been there. And yet they still fall short against Kansas City. But now here they are with a better opportunity, because Kansas City is not even a part of it. And even you omitting the Kansas City thing, you just look around and you're like, I don't know if I love any of these teams. So it's almost like there's a weakened field or a better opportunity that is out there for Buffalo, but they're not better than they were, right? Like, they're not the best version of themselves either. I think that game, to me, is the game of the weekend. Absolutely fascinated to see how it all plays out. And then Mark's right about, Jacksonville. Like, they didn't just beat the Denver Broncos. They beat them down. That was a decisive win. So, yes, to go back into Mile High at some point and beat the Broncos, it's a different task. Okay? And it's going to be more difficult to do it the second time around, obviously, because the Broncos, now that's the only team they've lost to in like 3 months. I think they would love to. I think I saw an interview with Alex Singleton this week where I think he was beating around the bush. I don't think he mentioned them by name, but it was like there's one team that we really look forward to playing, and I think it's Jacksonville. That's the only thing standing between them and an even more impressive final 3 months of the season. So I get all that, but there's a gap that exists, I think, between the Denver Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Broncos are going to have to elevate their game quite a bit to be able to beat Jacksonville. But that's the big question with this Broncos team, regardless of who they play. The question of the playoffs is whether they can elevate their game, and by they, I mean Bo Nix. I mean the offense. Sure, the defense can create, if they can create a turnover or two, that's something they haven't done a lot this season, and that would be an even better version of already a very good defense. But we're really talking about where you're looking at and saying it's the offense that's got to be better. It's the offense, it's incumbent upon them to elevate their game. It shouldn't be on the defense. Another thing on the Broncos defense that they have to do to carry the Broncos offense to the Super Bowl. But this weekend's going to be very interesting. I'm interested to see Drake May on a playoff stage. And the NFC is loaded. I think all those games are going to be great. Amon Green, Green Bay Packer legend, will be my guest next hour. But in the more immediate future, if you want to bet on the Broncos' next matchup, there are odds for that. And it might surprise you which teams they are favored against and which one they would not be, based on the hypothetical odds. More after this. Welcome in hour number 2 on this Thursday. Wish it was a little bit better weather outside. If you're out there driving, listening to the show on Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR, first of all, I appreciate you doing that. And second, be safe out there. Does look like it let up. I don't know if it's supposed to come back. That's why Sydney Jackson will be by along in a little bit with her weather report. But again, appreciate you tuning in. You can also watch the show if you so choose on the social media platforms for both Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR at XTRA Sports 1300 or at 740 KVOR. And then while you're there, like, subscribe, follow. You'd be helping me out. And most importantly, leave a comment. And I'll get to those over the course of the program. You can also call or text the show at 719-247-1313. We're not even to wild card weekend yet. But because the Broncos aren't playing, we got to look ahead. We got to get on with it. The football this weekend, let's get to it. Let's get on with it. And then let's have the Broncos get in the mix here. And that's where FanDuel has helped us out tremendously. Because FanDuel today has put out, in order to get your money, I mean, make no mistake about that, hypothetical, but also bettable odds and lines for next week's divisional round. Now, what it is they give you all the potential matchups, set lines for all of those matchups and odds. You can bet on those now. And if that matchup doesn't come to fruition, then the bet is off. But it does give us some insight into the markets and what they think of these teams and potential matchups. And we were just talking about this the other day. You know, who's the team that you would most like to see the Broncos play next round? And who would you like to see the least? Well, you will not be surprised. At least I don't think you should be surprised to find out that a hypothetical matchup in round 2 between the Denver Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers would be the most advantageous for the Denver Broncos. According to the betting markets, they would be 4.5-point favorites, or they are 4.5-point favorites in this hypothetical matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they are minus 240 favorites. We've whittled down the field to just 7 on each side of the bracket, and then we're talking about teams that we would be down to 4 on each side of the bracket next week. The best of the best, supposedly, and the Denver Broncos would be a prohibitive favorite at home next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, would be favored by 4.5. And if you wanted to bet them straight up, it would be minus 240. So not a lot of value there. But that says that the most advantageous matchup for the Denver Broncos would be Pittsburgh, which I believe is the consensus we came to just a couple of days ago. This one surprised me. If it were the Chargers who beat New England, that would automatically mean the Chargers, as the lowest remaining seed, no matter what else happens, would be visiting Empower Field. Denver would be 3-point favorites and would be minus 158 on the money line. That's a little surprising to me because I think a potential matchup in round 2 with the LA Chargers would be a little bit tricky for the Denver Broncos. it would be a different looking Chargers team visiting in Power Field than the one that just visited a few days ago. Yes. Most notably, Justin Herbert will be the quarterback. So the line of 3, while recognizing that the Chargers would be a more difficult matchup than the Pittsburgh Steelers would be, I'm still a little bit surprised because most of these lines, and I went through not only the Broncos' potential opponents, but New England and the NFC and all that kind of stuff, most of them are -1.5 one way or another. So for it to be a little bit more with 2 division rivals and a team in the Chargers that, regardless of whether the games have been in LA or Denver, have gotten the better of the Denver Broncos when Justin Herbert's been the quarterback, I'm a little bit surprised. Would I be leaning Denver's way in that matchup? Yeah. But if most of these hypothetical lines are -1.5, I think that the Charger game should be that. I think the Broncos should be favored, but maybe by the 1.5. But this is the market saying best matchup for Denver, Pittsburgh. Second best matchup for Denver, LA. They would be 1.5 point favorites if they were to host Houston, the 5 seed. And what would have to happen? New England wins, Jacksonville wins, Houston wins, Texans visit in Power Field. They would be 1.5 point favorites and -120 favorites on the money line. So that's a pretty close to straight up. I mean, that's home field. It used to be, home field's worth 3. The people I've talked to in the industry say that's not the standard anymore. It's more like 1.5. So basically a matchup between Denver and Houston is a toss-up. And the Broncos are laying the 1.5 because they're at home. And I think that's spot on. Because you can't go too far because we know who the Denver Broncos are. The idea that the Broncos would blow out anybody for it to be 5.5, 6.5 as the line that's not a good idea, because even when the Broncos dominate a football game, they still don't pull away from the opposing team. Denver, Houston, it feels right that that's a toss-up. Arguably the best 2 defenses in the league. 2 quarterbacks that the public kind of goes back and forth on depending on the week. Or if one guy is on a super long winning streak like Bo Nix was and like CJ Stroud is on now. The battle of wits, perhaps, between Sean Payton and DeMeco Ryans. So I buy that. Not a terrible trip for Houston to make. I think that that's probably the best one. The most accurate line to say that Denver and Houston as foes are a toss-up. And this is where home field makes the difference. Broncos -1.5. And the only other matchup that they could possibly have in the divisional round is against Buffalo. The Denver Broncos, I'm having trouble with the tense. Do I say they are or they would be? Because you can bet on this right now. So this is the opening line, is it not? Because if you bet on this and Buffalo ends up being the matchup for Denver, your bet is locked in. That's your bet. So this is the line. The Broncos would be 1.5 point underdogs against the Buffalo Bills in Denver. And they would be +102. And again, if 1.5 is the new standard for home field, that's basically saying that Buffalo is 1.5 better than Denver. Or I'm sorry, 3 points better than Denver. Give Denver the 1.5 for home field. So that, but that speaks to what I was talking about earlier. And why that game on Sunday morning between the Buffalo Bills and the Jacksonville Jaguars that you can listen to on 740 KVOR, KVOR.com, and the KVOR app is so fascinating. Because there is a chance that the Buffalo Bills come out and are merely an extension of what they have been all season. Josh Allen, a really good running game and a bunch of stuff that doesn't quite add up to a great football team. Or because it's now the playoffs, the Buffalo Bills lock in a little bit more and Josh Allen takes his game to another level and they are the scariest team in the AFC. But I've been on Buffalo as the let somebody else beat them if you're a Bronco fan. And now the betting markets are backing me up on this and say even with home field advantage, even with the Denver Broncos being the number 1 seed and Buffalo being the 6th seed, the Buffalo Bills are better than the Broncos enough that they would still be favored even though they would have to go on the road. What I would say, and this is it for entertainment purposes only, of course. If you think that's going to be the matchup, pick your side right now. That's what I would say, because there's a chance that this line doesn't even exist if Jacksonville beats them. But to me, that looks like a line that's going to go more Buffalo's way if they come out and look like the Bills of old. So if you're betting Buffalo, if you're with me that you would take Buffalo over Denver, probably want to lock in the bet now. Because I think Buffalo will be bigger favorites if they show what I think they might be capable of showing against Jacksonville. But it's an interesting exercise. I know they're just trying to get your money, but for show content, it is interesting. Another thing I found interesting, New England can play a lot of these same teams, 2 of them, right? New England could play Houston or New England could play Pittsburgh. New England would be bigger favorites against both of those teams than the Denver Broncos would be. So what is the market saying about that? The market is saying that even though the Broncos have a 1 by their name, New England is better. They are the better team. That's how I read that they would be bigger favorites against Pittsburgh, 5.5 point favorites over Pittsburgh instead of 4.5 and 1.5 point favorites, same as Denver would be. However, if you were betting New England on the money line, it would be minus 126 instead of minus 120. And look, the Broncos have the 1 seed, but let's also take into account the fact that New England is only the number 2 seed because they lost to the Raiders way back when. And look, to the victor over the Raiders go the spoils. Broncos took care of business twice against the Raiders, so they get the number 1 seed. Fair play to them. But that's the only thing separating them. They have the same record. It's a tiebreaker. It's an incredibly convoluted tiebreaker called common opponents. But here's the good news out of all this if you're a Broncos fan. You could still very much say this team is doubted. And this team, maybe Sean Payton won't talk about it, and he's said recently he doesn't look at stuff like this. Players will hear it. Players will find it. And they'll say, wait a minute, we're the 1 seed. And New England would be more prohibitive favorites against these teams than we would be. Or better yet, we would be underdogs in our own building against the 6 seed. So if you think a big reason why the Denver Broncos are where they are right now is because of that motivation, because of the chip on their shoulder, because of the fact they are constantly disrespected, direct your thank you letters to FanDuel. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Packers legend Amon Green. How does he feel about his Packers now as opposed to maybe going into the Denver game? Well, the NFL coaching carousel continues to turn and is adding more spots as we go along. Today, Mike McDaniel is no longer the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, as Stephen Ross made the decision to let him go. I'll get more on my thoughts on the Dolphins parting ways with him in a little bit. I'll just say that I'm a little surprised because I thought that the word out of Miami was that Stephen Ross, when things were kind of bad, especially around the time that he fired Chris Greer, the idea was that Ross heard how hot of a candidate Mike McDaniel would be as a retread and thought to himself, well, why don't I just keep the guy? If he's a good enough coach to make a lot of teams want him once we fire him, why don't I just keep him? And then you couple that with Miami actually responding a little bit. I mean, they didn't go on a huge run, but I am a little bit surprised. But as Mark Moses, who joined me in hour number one, says, it's 31 teams and then whatever the heck is going on in South Florida. So Mike McDaniel is on the market, and there is another team that does not have a head coach. So let's do some matchmaking, shall we? I could use your help at 719-247-1313. Let's start with Miami. To me, if you're going to wait this long to fire Mike McDaniel, I don't, as Mark Moses suggests, I don't believe that Stephen Ross was golfing and then just decided. There's some other reports out there that maybe he changed his mind. I got to believe this is Harbaugh related. The shine off of his Super Bowl ring has got to be the beacon that is calling to Stephen Ross to say, that's the guy I got to get. And Mark brought this up last hour, putting aside how good the decisions are that the Dolphins make. This is an owner that is willing to skirt the rules, to pay top dollar to get what he wants. And the timing of this just feels to me like it's Harbaugh related. So let's say that Stephen Ross gets his man and put Harbaugh in Miami. Then where does Mike McDaniel end up? If he ends up getting a head coaching gig at all. If I were advising Mike McDaniel, and I'm sure he wants to be a head coach again in the NFL. To me, if Baltimore does not offer him the job, I take a coordinator job. If I'm Mike McDaniel, because I do believe that he's going to be a hot second chance retread candidate, however you want to phrase it. If I think he needs to be choosy, because we've said this before, that a guy that gets fired always going to be hired again soon. Okay, well, if he takes the wrong job, then the bloom is going to come off of that rose. And if you're Mike McDaniel, do you want to go to Cleveland? Do you want to go to Tennessee? I know they have Cam Ward, but what else do they have in Tennessee? Do you want to go to Arizona? Do you want to go to Vegas? Now, maybe Atlanta is interesting to him, although I think Kirk Cousins is about out the door, and I think the jury is out on Michael Penix. The Giants will be interesting. I don't know that Mike McDaniel and New York are a fit. So I look at it and I say, Baltimore or bust. And if this whole thing is about Lamar, let's not forget what Mike McDaniel has done with Tua. He probably ended up getting more out of Tua than a lot of other people could. And if part of firing Harbaugh was him protecting Todd Monken, clearly Baltimore wants an upgrade on the offensive side. And that could be in the form of a coordinator, but it could be in the form of a head coach. Mike McDaniel to Baltimore, and let McDaniel be the one to, in Ian Rappaport's words, reach Lamar Jackson by designing some boss plays for him. Let's do that. If Baltimore's not interested in Mike McDaniel, then if I'm Mike McDaniel, I wait. I wait and I see what opens up. And there's already an opening that for him would be incredibly intriguing, and that is the offensive coordinator job in Detroit. That makes a ton of sense as well. And I don't see any reason, as disappointing as the Lions were this year, I don't see any reason to think that Mike McDaniel would lose some of his Q rating by working with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff in that Detroit Lions offense. But if I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm going to be choosy. I'm going to be very choosy. I'd want a head coaching gig. Baltimore would be, I think, the place that's open right now that I would be most interested in. But if not, being the OC on the Detroit Lions wouldn't be a bad gig either. Here's the one that I want to throw out there and see what you think. And I'm matchmaking. I'm not predicting. I'm matchmaking. I'm saying who fits where. Vance Joseph takes the job in Vegas. Institutional knowledge of the division, its teams, its quarterbacks. That might be a nice little olive branch to extend to Max Crosby, who clearly was not pleased with the team's decision to deactivate him down the stretch. And now you're getting a guy who coordinated a defense that set a franchise record for sacks that blew away every other team in terms of the sacks they got, and now he's adding Max Crosby. So I think Vance Joseph makes a lot of sense in Vegas. And then Vance takes Davis Webb with him. I don't think, and the Raiders are interviewing both of these guys. Raiders, to my knowledge, are the only team that has reached out to Davis Webb. And some of the reason for that could be getting intel. That's also part of the utility of these coaching searches, is that you get a little bit of intel on one of your chief rivals. And it opens the door to say, okay, we interviewed you. We gave you a chance. It's not the right fit for you to lead our football team, but hey, we would love to have you as our offensive coordinator. And who better for Davis Webb to be the OC under than Vance Joseph? How about that? How about the Raiders poaching Vance Joseph and Davis Webb? If I'm Brady and company, I think long and hard about that. Again, I need to hear what Vance Joseph has learned, because you remember Vance Joseph coached a team led by a young quarterback, and that's the direction that the Raiders are going. Now, in no world is Drew Lock as good as Fernando Mendoza, but there's a lot that goes on with building up a young quarterback. Davis Webb would be great for it. I just don't think Davis Webb is ready to be the head coach of a team. Vance Joseph tells Davis and Brady what he's learned and why he'll be better the second time around as a head coach. He can throw on all the game film he wants of the Broncos defense and say, I bring this to the table, and I'll bring Davis Webb with me, who you were at least somewhat intrigued at the idea of bringing him in. Talk about winning the day over a division rival. Poaching their defensive coordinator and their young up-and-coming QB coach that is a little bit stuck where he is because Joe Lombardi is the offensive coordinator and Sean Payton is always going to call plays. Davis Webb is going to go somewhere else at some point. He's not coaching under Sean Payton if he has aspirations of advancing in his career. Is that this next year? That remains to be seen. So Harbaugh to Miami, McDaniel to Baltimore, Vance and Davis Webb leave Denver for Vegas. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. There are other jobs that are open. Get into a few of those, but I very much welcome your thoughts on those or any of the open positions in the National Football League right now. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports right after this on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. We are matchmaking for NFL teams as the Dolphins today fired Mike McDaniel, bringing the total number of openings to 8 in the National Football League. I got some of the more interesting openings done. I have Harbaugh landing in Miami. I think that's the fit. Again, we're doing fit here, not predictions. I'm not an insider. Although Mark Moses joined me on the show last hour and kind of intimated that Stephen Ross is going to go all in on trying to get John Harbaugh. I just think Miami will want to make a splashy move, and it would be kind of a coup with these other teams that are all after Harbaugh as well for Miami to get him. If the culture down there in Miami isn't great, I know the way that John Harbaugh left Baltimore, but that's a long-time marriage that kind of fell apart. Let's not forget what John Harbaugh did over the course of his career in Baltimore. Fresh start for him down in South Beach might be a good thing. Mike McDaniel, meanwhile, if I'm advising him, I'm saying if they give you the chance to work with Lamar, work with Lamar. And if Baltimore doesn't give you that chance, go be the Lions OC. Or better yet, this from the 316, Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill to Kansas City. I will co-sign one of those two things, and it is the first one. I don't want Tyreek Hill back in Kansas City. I'm okay with that. Maybe we don't. There's got to be another way. Mike McDaniel? Yep. Sign me up. Which leads actually perfectly into some of these other ones. And this is, again, we're matchmaking. I'm not predicting. I'm just being, for this one, incredibly selfish. I want Matt Nagy to get the job in Tennessee. The general manager in Tennessee used to be in Kansas City, so it would make a lot of sense that he be looking, and he already has Spagnuolo, Nagy. Take Matt Nagy away from the Kansas City Chiefs. Take him tomorrow, if it's allowed. I don't know. But take Matt Nagy, and I am looking out for the Chiefs and not the Tennessee Titans. Take Matt Nagy, and the Chiefs go get Mike McDaniel to be their offensive coordinator. Because I said with McDaniel, yes, I believe that he's going to be, if he doesn't get a job this cycle, he'd be a hot candidate for the next cycle. But he can do damage to his reputation a bit if he takes the wrong gig. Detroit would not be one of those jobs. Like that would be good. I can't, as much as I'd like to see him in Kansas City, I can't fault him if he took an OC job with Detroit. But working with Mahomes, yeah, McDaniel will maintain his ability to get, maybe be the candidate of next year's coaching cycle and helping the Mahomes and the Chiefs bounce back next year. So I'm fully on board with that. But you need Matt Nagy in Tennessee first. And that's the only job he's going to get, which is me telling you Matt Nagy should not be a head coach in the NFL again. That's what I'm telling you, but I don't have the best interest of the Tennessee Titans at heart. This one coming in from Albert, Brian Flores to the Raiders. I think you're on the right track. Brian Flores to the Raiders, Vance Joseph to Tennessee, and Harbaugh to Miami. So Albert and I agree on Harbaugh. Flores, that's a guy I really need to know what he's learned. I really need to know how he's going to be a better head coach the second time around, even more so than Vance Joseph. Because, like, with Vance in Denver, he just was in over his skis. He just couldn't handle it. Brian Flores, things got messy. And I'm not even talking about, his, lawsuit with the NFL. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way he handled Tua was awful. And there are a lot of reports that came out during his time in Miami that this guy, and it's guys from that, that Belichick tree, that New England Vrabel. That's why Vrabel is so interesting, because he's just not that way. Like, all these other guys want to be like dictators. And the person I'm thinking of first and foremost when it comes to off of Bill Belichick's coaching tree, taking a head coaching gig, which is also probably the reason why Vegas doesn't go Brian Flores. But, I mean, his acumen on the defensive side of the football, I mean, that's not in question here. Vance to Tennessee, I could see that. In fact, I think that the Vegas thing is very possible. But in a world where Vegas goes a different direction, I could see Vance Joseph ending up in Tennessee. Because really what I suggested with Vance Joseph and Davis Webb, that could be in Arizona, that could be in Tennessee, that could be in New York, that could be any of these places. So you get Vance Joseph, coach up your defense, maybe a better version of Vance Joseph as a head coach than he was in Denver. You bring in an up-and-coming star in the coaching reins in Davis Webb to work with Cam Ward to get him to realize his potential. We see, what Davis Webb's been able to do with Bo Nix, and I think Cam Ward is more talented than Bo Nix is. So the Vance and Davis show can go anywhere. I just think it makes a lot of sense in Vegas with most likely Fernando Mendoza, right? Like that's what it's going to be. Some of these other ones, I think Stefanski for the Giants. That makes a lot of sense. He's from that part of the country. Which I think tugs at you. It's you work with Jackson Dart. I'm not totally sold on Jackson Dart, but I think it's a fun project that someone like Kevin Stefanski would be interested in undertaking. The Atlanta Falcons, which I don't know. At some point, we got to retire the idea that the Atlanta Falcons are a great job. Because either they keep making the wrong decision or Atlanta's not as good of a situation as we all believed it to be. But it's like I'm kind of still there. I don't know how much I love Penix, but Bijan Robinson, arguably the best running back in football. Some of the other skill positions they have pass rushers. They're in a division that it wouldn't take too much to end up there. And Mark Moses, who joined me last hour, said that the better teams down the stretch, the teams that by the end of the year looked better than Tampa and Carolina, were Atlanta and New Orleans. So I think there's I think Atlanta's still interesting. If this hire doesn't work, then we got to be done with Atlanta being this great job, because they've tried it a lot of different ways and it hasn't worked. How about Clint Kubiak for that job? Son of Gary, coordinating the Seattle Seahawks offense right now, maybe to the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold, questions about whether Seattle was going to replicate what Minnesota was, and they certainly did with Kubiak. You remember 2 years ago, the New Orleans Saints came out and were, or was that 3 years ago? But Kubiak, the first week, they were that year's version of the Colts. Like they're scoring a ton of points and they fell off, but clearly Kubiak has honed his game a little bit, and he's had a tremendous season with Seattle. And one thing he knows how to do is get the ball to his playmakers. The season that Jackson Smith and Jigba has had shows that Clint Kubiak doesn't overthink things. I got that guy. I want to get him the ball. Kubiak would also be a good fit in Arizona. I just think that Atlanta is the better job. But getting somebody to coach up and scheme the offense to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball would be good too. But I'll go Clint Kubiak in Atlanta. And who's that leave? Arizona. With all due respect, I don't really care who Arizona gets. It is clear they are so far away. So they got to go coordinator route. Harbaugh's not taking that job, and there aren't guys like McDaniel and Vance Joseph, other than Vance Joseph's ties to Arizona, that organization. I don't know. Maybe he likes living there. I mean, he came back to Denver, right? Came back to Denver. But if I'm Vance Joseph, I don't know why because this could be the last shot for him. Stefanski, same way. Harbaugh. I mean, all these guys that have already been head coaches, why would you go to Arizona? So they got to go the coordinator route. I'll go Mike LaFleur. Why Mike LaFleur? Well, because he's an offensive coordinator as opposed to Jonathan Gannon, who is a defensive guy coming over from Philadelphia. And he's been coaching under Sean McVay. So it is forget names. It is the most like building your ideal candidate. Have they coached under Shanahan? Have they coached under McVay? Yes. Okay, we want him. Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator. Now, they could go the defensive side as well with Shula, but teams tend to want to go from one side of the football to the other. And to go from Gannon, who is a defensive guy, to Shula, who's a defensive guy, I don't see it. So how about Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator? And then that leaves Cleveland. How about Mike McCarthy comes out of retirement? Take that job. It's safe, makes sense. It's not like Cleveland's going to be the best job out there. Seems like a good fit. Mike McCarthy and the Cleveland Browns. Take your thoughts, 719-24-7, 1313. Don't forget, coming up this weekend, we got the wild card games, both on 740 KVR and Extra Sports 1300. Saturday night, the Packers-Bears game will be on Extra Sports 1300. And then on Sunday, the wild card triple header with Buffalo-Jacksonville, followed by San Francisco and Philadelphia, to be capped off by the Patriots and Chargers, will be on 740 KVR, KVR.com, and the KVR app. And I'll remind you again on Monday, but KVR will be the home as well for the Houston-Pittsburgh game Monday night. Coming up next, we'll reset with the three stories that are driving the show. More on Mike McDaniel getting fired by the Miami Dolphins, but the biggest local story is what the Nuggets without Nikola Jokic continue to do. And they did it again last night in Boston. More Drive Time Sports next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Thursday. Great to have you on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR, as well as the websites and apps for those to find radio stations. The apps, whether it be Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR, are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. Speaking of well-being, stay safe out on the roads there. Let me know if the plows are clearing a path here. And I gotta get to, take my kids places. I gotta go to DIA tomorrow. And I'm not the only one, and I'm probably have it easier than some people do. But man, now the snow. Now the snow. We'll get through it, right? We always do. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. Perhaps you have some thoughts on these, which are the 3 stories that are driving the show. Not that. Where did my fancy opening go for what's driving the show? It is gone. No, here it is. Technical difficulties. Now let's go. That's more like it. All right, we start with the Jokic-less Nuggets. Still doing it.
Now Murray. Murray's got a lane. Over to Watson. Spins up a 3, and it's good!
Altitude Television on the call. The Denver Nuggets beat the Boston Celtics 114-110, and that was one of Jamal Murray's career-high 17 assists. And to me, we could talk about Peyton Watson. We could talk about Spencer Jones, and they are deserving of their credit because what you have seen at the end of this road trip that started off so poorly, you lost against Orlando, and then you lose against Miami, and you lose twice because Nikola Jokic gets hurt. It has taken a lot of Denver Nuggets stepping up their game to salvage this thing and end up with 3 wins on this long road trip. But the guy at the top of my list, because he's been at the top of my list whenever I talk about the Denver Nuggets, is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray was the story before Jokic got hurt, and he's been the story after. This guy is continuing to showcase that he is more than just the sidekick to Nikola Jokic. Because he has played at a level that he has never played at before Jokic got hurt. And now in just a few games, and we'll see how this continues throughout the month of January, his scoring numbers haven't fallen, and he's assisting 4 more a night and grabbing 4 more rebounds. He's elevated his game like all these guys have, and what's at a higher level than All-Star. Because Jamal Murray was playing at All-Star level with Jokic, his numbers are better without him. But this is what you want to see from Jamal Murray. Nobody wants this circumstance, but it's been so positive for him. Now stress testing it a little bit. I'm not saying wear the guy out, but I'm curious to see how Jamal Murray performs continually throughout the season and in some different situations. And at every juncture that I tune in for that, Jamal Murray plays great. And he is now leading. He's the alpha. He's the guy. He's Batman. And all of these other Nuggets players are following suit. It's been a collective effort for the Nuggets to beat Boston, to especially beat Philadelphia, to hang in there the way they did and nearly pull out the game against Cleveland. But Jamal Murray stands out to me in the way he is playing. 17 assists. He had 16 against Brooklyn. Nuggets maybe, just maybe, might survive January after all. Although the West is still very congested and one loss could drop the Nuggets 2 or 3 spots. But another good night for the Nuggets despite not having the best player in the world. 114-110 as they beat the Boston Celtics. Let's go to football for story number 2, and that is Miami finally getting around to making a decision on their coach. They took so long. I thought that they had already decided Mike McDaniel was going to stick around. But earlier this afternoon, or this morning even, they decided to fire Mike McDaniel, which is surprising to me. I guess nothing the Dolphins should do that, but it does. Because I thought that once Chris Greer was fired, it was inevitable that Mike McDaniel was following him. And I don't mean like at some point. I meant like almost immediately. And Mike McDaniel hung on, and I thought that the Dolphins responded. He got a little bit of something out of Quinn Ewers, and I thought he was able to show that maybe he didn't completely lose the locker room, that it was maybe more the collection of talent than the guy trying to coach up the talent. And I thought that he had done enough. And when Monday rolled around and Mike McDaniel wasn't on the list, and Tuesday rolled around and John Harbaugh got fired, but not Mike McDaniel, I thought, or Wednesday, whatever day that was, days blend in. I thought, okay, Mike McDaniel's safe, which leads me to, I think, the biggest why behind this. This has to be Harbaugh related. You know, we talk about Baltimore going to have a difficult job selling whoever they hire as a better coach than John Harbaugh. I almost said Jim again. They would have a tough time selling that the next coach they hire is better than Jim Harbaugh, for that matter. Dolphins have that if they get John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has been to the playoffs repeatedly. He's won a Super Bowl. Mike McDaniel has done neither one of those things. The star chasing that Miami has done in the past when it comes to players, now I think they're going to try and do it with a coach. It makes sense that Harbaugh ends up in Miami. I'm not guaranteeing it because Miami's not necessarily the model organization. And that interview process is going to be very different. With Vance Joseph, we're talking about him earlier, he's going to be interviewed by the owner. And he's going to have to give those reasons why he should be hired. John Harbaugh is going to go into these front offices, sit across from an owner, and say, why should I become your head coach? Because John Harbaugh is now the number one candidate for all of these teams. He's going to be interviewing the teams, not the other way around. I don't know if Stephen Ross has the answers that John Harbaugh wants to hear, other than I'll let you pick the GM, which might be a great bargaining chip. But whether they get Harbaugh or not, I can't believe that this has nothing to do with the fact that Harbaugh is now a free agent. And as far as Mike McDaniel goes, that guy's going to be a head coach again in the NFL, whether it's this offseason or next. He will not wait long. In the meantime, most likely he'll go coordinate a football team, and there is an opening with a team that was as disappointing as anyone this season, but yet still has the pieces to be really good, and that's the Lions. You want to talk about a hand-in-glove fit and a gift to Detroit fans, how about Mike McDaniel coming in and telling Dan Campbell, why don't you take a step back, buddy? You handle the press conferences. I'll call plays for Amon-Ra St. Brown, for Sam Laporta, for Jared Goff, for Jahmyr Gibbs. That makes all the sense in the world, and Mike McDaniel would be probably the hottest candidate next year's cycle if he took over the Lions offense next year. And now we go back to hoops on the local level for story number 3.
I think a better word to describe it was soft. Okay, and every game you have to come out and be ready to play, and we were not.
That is Air Force head coach Stacey McIntyre last night. As bitter a loss as I have seen with this team since I started my role calling games. Everything that was going on with Air Force was building up towards a win, maybe even a resounding one. And where the Falcons say what we see we've realized the same thing that you've realized. The fact that we were able to smother both UNLV and San Diego State defensively, the fact that our head coach thinks we're closer to the top of the conference than maybe we previously realized. The way they could show that is by coming out last night and beating Boise State. Still a very good team. I don't want to take too much credit away from the Broncos. They came in and they were ready. But you heard it right there from Stacey McIntyre. Her team was not ready to play, and they got pushed around a little bit. And they lose 70-59. And the potential of this team goes another night unrealized. I see it. I do. And this is not just me because I'm the play-by-play guy for the team. Look, I hope they win every game. I root for them to win every game. But I don't always talk about this team in the way that I am talking about this year's version of this team. They are as prepared as far as the game plan on a night-to-night basis as any team in the Mountain West. They have one of the Mountain West's best players in Milani Perry and Jada McNabb. They got talent. They have depth. If they show up, they're capable of doing some things that program has not seen anyone do in a while or ever. And so last night was a absolute bitter pill to swallow, because I agree with Stacey McIntyre's pregame assessment. I think Air Force is better than Boise State. I do. And I wouldn't say that about previous iterations of either team. Boise State was a problem the last couple of years. It was disappointing, certainly. And the players talked to Milani Perry after the game. She echoed those same sentiments. Like, nobody is like, oh, yeah, that's the best we can do. They know that. But it's unfortunate that they didn't show it last night. And they're not going to get that opportunity. Even if they bounce back on Saturday against San Jose State, that's great. And they have to do that. But that's not a win that is going to show how good this team is, with all due respect to the Spartans. Boise State was one of those games. CSU, a week from yesterday, will be one of those games. Perhaps getting over the hump of the Wyoming Cowgirls would be one of those wins. But for this team to show to the conference, hey, this is who we are, in a win, that's going to be put on hold for another week. But the task at hand for Saturday is show up, start fast, and just put that team away. because they're absolutely capable of doing it. Boise State's a good team. I expected that game to be back and forth. If Air Force comes out the way they should against San Jose State, it will not be a back and forth game. And then you recalibrate and get ready for CSU at Clune Arena on Wednesday. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, John Elway with, shall we say, a reimagining of his tenure as the Broncos general manager. 719-247-1313. Trying to find fits for these NFL teams that don't have coaches, and find good fits for the coaches that are looking for gainful employment. Here's one a little bit outside the box from Dave. Pat Shurmur to Cleveland. He's available. But it would never happen. But let's play this game a little bit. Pat Shurmur comes in to Cleveland and gets to choose his quarterback. Is he choosing Shedeur? I'd almost just like to see it just because of how fascinating that would be. That Pat Shurmur would be leading up an organization, and he doesn't have Deion there. And there's another one. How about Deion Sanders to Cleveland? Let's start up that stuff again. So Deion Sanders can say there's no way I'm going to the NFL and all that stuff that he said a billion times. Pat Shurmur is allowed. Jimmy Haslam brings him in and says, do you like the bird in the hand, or do you like the well, it's not two in the bush, but well, I guess it is the two in the draft. I would be curious what Pat Shurmur would do. Now, if Shedeur Sanders all of a sudden had Lamar Jackson's power in Cleveland, would Shedeur endorse the hiring of Pat Shurmur? That's maybe an even more interesting question there, but one that's even in a weirder alternate universe because he would not have that power at all. I like where your head's at, Dave. Look, there are some of these teams that I know there are fans of that team, but for the general public, I do care more about who lands in Cleveland than, say, who lands in Arizona. I can at least say that much. Speaking of people who have made quarterback decisions, questionable ones, John Elway. Have you seen his Netflix doc yet? And it started with The Last Dance. That's what I blame all this on, by the way. And I love The Last Dance as much as anybody. It was the greatest documentary series, however you want to, that I've ever seen. I loved every nanosecond of The Last Dance. But what The Last Dance has done is twofold. One, it has spawned a lot more documentaries, which, you know, I read nonfiction. I don't read fiction. And when I watch things that are not Office reruns, documentaries are one of my favorite go-to things, especially sports documentaries. So that's good. But The Last Dance did something. I think it changed the documentary business from being what really happened, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just laying it all out there without comment, just this is what happened. You want to know what happened? This is what happened. Pull no punches. And then now so many documentaries are PR vehicles. Or the documentary subjects only want to lend their perspective in the documentary if they are able to control the narrative. One thing I know about the Elway documentary, which I have not seen, it's been on my list, so just haven't had the time. There's not a lot about his general manager days. That's what I've been told. And if you've watched it, you can tell me whether that's right or wrong. But I have been told that there's not a lot on him being a general manager. Wouldn't that be, I'm not saying that's more important than his playing career, but does it deserve a little bit more than just a nod of, oh yeah, by the way, he became a general manager of the Broncos? I would think so. What John Elway did is rare. For someone to have the playing career he did and then have the success that he had as a general manager. I know how it ended. I'm just saying the success he had as a general manager when he brought in Peyton Manning, not a lot of guys make that turn. So that, to me, beyond the local ties, I find it interesting. I would be curious to see how John Elway, on the Mount Rushmore, the greatest quarterbacks of all time, was able to parlay that career into winning the Super Bowl as an executive. And what about John Elway allowed him to be able to do that? Now, I have my thoughts, and I've certainly heard from people, we're close to this story, but I'm speaking from a more general point of view. If you didn't know a lot about John Elway becoming the general manager like you knew he was, wouldn't you be interested? It feels intentional. Now, I said this when John Elway ultimately walked away from being a general manager. It does not solely who he was as a player or what he means to the organization. It is, it's his version of Johnny Unitas in a where did Johnny Unitas go? The Rams? Michael Jordan in a Wizards uniform. Like, you know what I mean? Or Michael, even worse, Michael Jordan as an executive. But you get what I'm saying. Like, John Elway shouldn't be remembered for, the quarterback carousel he went through post Peyton Manning. And even him bringing Peyton Manning to Denver does not even overshadow what he did as a player. What he did as a player was far more meaningful and consequential and more to his legacy as a Denver Bronco than anything he did as a GM. But he had success as a general manager, and a bad few years at the end of it. I said when he walked away, that's going to be like a little sentence at the end of it. And that's not what I'm, you can talk about John Elway being a general manager and be, complimentary and show all the good he did. Not saying you have to dwell on Drew Lock or Paxton Lynch or Case Keenum. But it seems like if that is true, that there was only a slight mention of him being a GM, it's because of what mentioning that would open up. Especially here locally, because every bit of from the level that what happened. You weren't inside the organization, but you lived through all of that. That feels intentional to me. That feels like a choice. And this is hardly not the only one. Like so many of these sports documentaries, I've turned them on and I've turned them off because they're just they're puff pieces. Like they'll put a little something. I mean, even Connor Stallions was painted as somewhat of a sympathetic figure in his little docu-series that he was in. Like, give me a break. But they throw in like one little bit of adversity. That's what they trade. They trade the opportunity to tell the whole story to get access to the subject of the documentary. And it started with The Last Dance. And I don't know that it's overall the best for sports documentaries. To wit, John Elway has been making the rounds. And it's great to hear from him. You know that, the health stuff that he's been dealing with. And because of how big of a legend he is around these parts, anytime John Elway speaks, we in Colorado listen. Even if we grew up despising what he did to our favorite football teams, or maybe that's just me. Well, he was on Shannon Sharp's podcast, Club Shay Shay. And he said something about one of the perceived whiffs of his time as general manager. And I want you to react to it, and I will as well. Here's John Elway. It's about 90-second clip from Club Shay Shay, Shannon Sharp's podcast.
You do regret Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Looking sitting right there, you had the fifth pick in the draft, and you don't take him. You think that would have changed the fortunes?
I do. I do. And because I really liked him. But, the problem is and the way that I worked is I wanted buy-in from the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get the buy-in from the coaching staff, right? I couldn't get everybody on the same page with it. And, and I loved him. Now, when he was coming out, he wasn't perfect.
Yeah, he was raw.
It was very, very raw, right? And and his accuracy was the biggest question.
Right.
Just athletic as hell, big, strong, competitive, and all those type things. But there was that was the one question. I loved him. That's why I say I regret it, is because I didn't overrule everybody and say
I'm taking him.
I'm taking him. Right. I'm taking him because now it's up to you to make him good. Right. But none of the coaches were all kind of, and then,
nobody.
And they were all hot on Bradley Chubb. Right. And so they were all hot on getting
pairing him with Vaughn.
But yeah, exactly. Right. So I just couldn't get the buy-in and even though I liked him. But so the one regret I have that we've talked about is that I didn't just overrule and say, we're taking him.
Right.
Now, again, you have to have the right coach.
To coach him up, because you look at him his first year, he wasn't like that until he got with Dayball, and now these coaches.
Correct, and be able to get. That's why if you don't have buy-in on that offensive side, and knowing that, okay, well, that's the one regret as a GM.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that? That's why?
You didn't get buy-in? This feels to me like a bit of revisionist history. Because I recall that at Josh Allen's pro day, which is in Laramie, Wyoming, not that far from Denver, John Elway wasn't there. And we heard leading up to the draft from credible reporters that the quarterback that John Elway loved in that draft was Sam Darnold. Which all these years later, maybe John Elway was onto something with Sam Darnold. But I don't have enough time in this show to go over all the reasons why I think that what John Elway is saying there is not entirely true. Now, I buy what he's saying about the coaching staff. Like that could be the truth there. That when they discuss Josh Allen, and by the way, Vance Joseph and the Broncos coached Josh Allen at the Senior Bowl. I buy the idea that when they sat down doing their due diligence leading up to the draft, that they had a discussion about Josh Allen, and Bill Musgrave, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, and Vance Joseph, who was the head coach at the time, said, I don't know. And right. And it was probably the accuracy. It was the accuracy, and it was the level that he played at. Right. Those were the two big knocks on Josh Allen. He wasn't accurate, and he didn't play in the Big Ten, SEC, Pac-12, all those. Right. I could imagine that the Broncos held those same things against him. So what John Elway is saying there about the buy-in or lack thereof, I absolutely believe that could be the case. But the idea that John Elway was sitting there going, man, I can't believe these guys don't like Josh Allen. I can't believe that they don't see what I see in this guy. And for John Elway, number 7, more than a man, less than a god in the state of Colorado, to feel like he can't overrule Vance Joseph and Bill Musgrave. Come on. Come on. If John Elway felt that strongly about Josh Allen, he would have overruled them. Come on now. Don't forget, just a couple of years prior, the Denver Broncos completely whiffed on Paxton Lynch. And to turn around and take an athletically gifted but incredibly raw prospect would have been, and you have to admit it, a tough sell at that time here in Colorado. It would have been a tough sell. You just missed on Paxton Lynch, and you're turning around and getting this gigantic, raw, inaccurate quarterback that has not played at the highest level of college football. You're going to, it's not that Josh Allen and Paxton Lynch are the same player, but they have too many similarities for Broncos country to be on board. Now, I'm not saying it was a universal feeling, but I was on the air on this radio station leading up to that draft. I did not get a lot of calls and texts from people saying, oh, the Broncos got to get Josh Allen. Not a lot of people came out of the woodwork to say that should be the pick. I got some Sam Darnolds. I got some Josh Rosens. I got some Baker Mayfields. And in fact, I would say more the sentiment at that time was not quarterback. Bradley Chubb was hailed as a home run. People loved that idea. And apparently the Broncos did as well. I seem to remember there wasn't actually a ton of talk, and part of it was because it was figured that the Broncos would not have a chance to get a Darnold or a Baker. There was some talk about Baker. I remember we discussed Baker, but Darnold was going to be long gone. So the reports that came out that they liked Darnold, it was like you had to trade up, and then the Jets traded up, and there's no way that was going to happen. And remember, like, not to bring up about it, because I like Josh Allen a ton, but remember there was like tweets. There's some tweets with him. Yeah, Josh Allen would have been a very tough sell. So even if John Elway liked him, I think that maybe he was a little bit gun shy because of what happened with Paxton Lynch and because of how a pick like that would be received. And even some part of them may be like, am I going down this road again? But the point that they bring up, that's the best one, is like, look, Josh Allen isn't Josh Allen if he lands in Denver. They didn't explicitly say that, but that's would have been the case. That's where it's not defending the Denver Broncos, but it's pointing out something very real here. Do you truly believe that at that time with that coaching staff, if they would have gotten Josh Allen, he would have become this guy? And that's something that we've started to change when we talk about the draft. We understand that where these guys go matters. And putting Josh Allen, a raw prospect as he was, with that Denver Broncos coaching staff, I don't think Josh Allen is the guy that is about to take on the Jaguars on Sunday. I really don't. But this is what happens when the documentaries, it becomes a chance to maybe massage. And Michael Jordan did it. Michael Jordan did it, it's okay for everybody. Michael Jordan did some of this, right? Everyone pointed and laughed at Isaiah Thomas when he was bringing up very legitimate gripes and was only kept off that team because Michael Jordan hated the guy. And Michael Jordan was given a huge platform to say it wasn't about that. It was about that. Or else Isaiah Thomas would have been on the team. Harmless in the grand scheme of things, of course. But documentaries in the ecosystem around sports documentaries, I have found that over the last few years, they're not exactly shot for shot accurate retelling of these stories. I can't speak for the Civil War. I watched the Civil War documentary. I'll take every line in there as gospel. I have no idea. With the sports documentaries and some of the press tours going on around it, I can go like, wait a minute.
You sure about that?
719-247-1313. Well, I have one more segment here on this Thursday edition of the show right after this. John Elway misremembering what he thought of Josh Allen and why the biggest regret of his general manager days was not overruling his coaches that didn't want Josh Allen. That's what it's been. It was that I didn't take Josh Allen, and now it's that I didn't overrule the coaches to take Josh Allen. It's fine, whatever. Just come on now. This coming from Kyle. For the Josh Allen pick, I totally agree. The main detail, however, is that we were in a crazy ownership limbo with Joe Ellis and a group of people running the team. There was no direction after Bolin passed. And that certainly made John Elway's job harder, but at the same time, he was a part of that. I mean, we got to be honest here. You could say that, Pat Bolin not being around and kind of guiding this organization was detrimental, and it absolutely was, and they lost something when he stepped away. But John Elway contributed to a little bit of that disarray. Right? Because some of his decisions as the Broncos football decision maker were highly questionable. So I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that John Elway was one of those people who is a bit perhaps rudderless or didn't have the guidance that he needed without Pat Bolin. Because the football side was almost as messy as the business side. Kyle continues, Elway is to blame as much as anyone, but I believe there was differing opinions and agendas from all leadership, which is why we were such a mess. The coaching staff didn't buy into Lynch or Locke either, which is why they failed. So that shows what he said is mostly true. We would have probably ruined Josh Allen too. Haha. Yep. I think that John Elway fibbing or trying to mold the truth, let's say, is kind of secondary to the, idea that, if the Broncos would have taken Josh Allen, then all of this would have never happened. Now, I'm not talking about this. This, for Broncos fans, is good. I'm saying between Peyton Manning and Sean Payton, that window, it wouldn't have been. It really wouldn't have been. And let's talk about Sam Darnold, too. I think Sam Darnold succeeds in Denver if John Elway is able to get his hands on him, because that's who he wanted. But isn't it just nice for you Broncos fans? Not a problem. Ancient history, right? You're getting ready to scout the upcoming opponent for the Denver Broncos in the playoffs, which they will host at home because they are the number 1 seed. This coming from Tom. Do you think that if Dion had another real good year at CU this year, that he would be up for the Browns job? I think No, actually, no. Because I was going to say that maybe he'd be up for it, but I ultimately don't think that he wants it. Like, that's the thing. Deion Sanders legitimately does not want to go to the NFL. The only caveat he threw out there was if he got to coach both of his sons, which I guess theoretically he could in Cleveland. I don't think he wants to coach in the NFL. I really don't. But as far as him being up for it, I don't think so either. I don't think he would want to either. Or I don't think the Browns would want him. I really don't. I think the route Like, even let's bend the timeline here, and let's say that Deion Sanders was coming off of a really good year this year at CU, and the Browns were looking for a coach. I don't think they'd be looking in Deion Sanders' direction. I think he would be down on their list. I think that they would consider it. They're probably throwing out a lot of very interesting candidates behind closed doors. Because now we're getting into, the health issues that he has and what is required from an NFL head coach. And then the dynamics it creates in the locker room. Right? Vic Fangio once called, the NFL a meritocracy. How would it be received by the veteran Browns players that Deion Sanders is coming in to coach his son? And so I don't think he would be. That'll do it for the show. Appreciate your patronage. Thanks to Mark Moses. Talk soon.